How did you then transition to the Brain Trust Accelerator Fund?
So it's a good question. We were making good progress, as I described, in increasing the number of clinical trials for patients with brain cancer. Most of those clinical trials were very true to our mission, trying to accelerate the development of a cure. A cure includes two components. There's the quantity of life, which is addressing that cancer component, and then there's the quality of life, which is the brain component. So brain cancer is that unique intersection of cancer and the brain, two very challenging things to think about. And we had made great progress in leveraging many of the therapies that had been developed for these other cancers, lung, breast, colorectal, and bringing them into brain cancer and improving not only the clinical trials, but also improving the expected survival for those patients, which was wonderful. The challenge that we had is that we also said we want to also improve the quality of life while we were also improving the quantity of life. And that had to do more with making sure that we were able to address disorders that were experienced in brain cancer patients, which are not unlike some of those in other brain-related diseases. Brain cancer patients frequently have, for example, some motor disturbances. They can have some symptoms not unlike epilepsy. They can have some cognitive defects secondary to the radiation therapy. So there are a variety of side effects to the brain cancer and its therapies, which can impair the quality of life for many of these patients. And what we decided to do was to explore not only the quantity, but also the quality of life. So we convened a meeting in about 2004, 2005 with a variety of other brain disease foundations, such as the Michael J. Fox Foundation, the Robert Packard ALS Foundation, the Alzheimer's Foundation, the National Institute for Neurological Disease and Stroke, and others. And we convened those foundations, and decided that we tried to learn what were each one of us experiencing as we were trying to make these awards and advance the therapies for patients with a variety of seemingly disparate brain diseases. What we realized is that each individual foundation, their scientists that were in the meetings, actually enjoyed the dialogue. For the first time, a Parkinson's scientist was actually talking to a brain cancer physician, or an Alzheimer's scientist or clinician was actually talking to an ALS treater. And as a result, people were starting to realize that there's actually more commonality in treating these brain diseases probably than there are differences. The molecules that are addressed are similar, the pathways that are aberrant seem to be similar, and as a result, we encouraged that dialogue. That alone was worthwhile. The second thing that we realized is we needed to be able to get the therapies into the brain to be able to have the beneficial effect. There is a natural barrier between the body and the brain. For teleologic reasons, it protects the brain against noxious substances that may be in the blood. However, for our various diseases, we needed to be able to advance therapies past that blood-brain barrier so that therapies can actually have an effect where they need to have an effect, namely in the brain. So we agreed, the four foundations agreed to be able to create a request for proposal, and we then had a common RFP and made awards to one institution in the East and one institution in the West Coast to advance therapies to be able to enable delivery of these molecules across that blood-brain barrier, and those actually have delivered some fruit. The final thing that we realized when we convened this meeting is that while we were making these awards, they were great awards, the scientists were doing great things, but we were getting stuck. They were getting stuck because they didn't have a way to advance in terms of clinical trials. They were in that translational space. The pharmaceutical industry would say they were a little bit early for us to start funding. Venture capitalists had grown in size to the point where they were having a difficult time doing early stage venture investing, let alone in brain-related diseases where the clinical endpoints are somewhat challenging. So we decided that what the field needed was a way to be able to connect, to be able to convert those great discoveries that were being made in the brain-related disease into real clinical trials. And while as good as these translational foundations were, they didn't have the time, the expertise, the capital to be able to advance these therapies. So we decided to create a small venture capital partnership whose mission is to be able to accelerate therapies for brain-related diseases, many of which are seeded by philanthropies with great scientists around the country but are having a difficult time getting traction in terms of venture funding and in terms of just the opportunity to move it forward. So we created the Brain Trust Accelerator Fund with the expressed intent of providing a venue for moving those great advances into the clinic as rapidly as we can. We try to add value and hopefully realize some good rates of return. We also try to advance therapies for patients with the various brain-related diseases. At the end of the day, we hope to be able to provide these companies with enough opportunities to either have additional corporate sponsors and to be acquired by a corporate partner, or with sufficient kind of justification to actually create a larger entity with other venture firms participating to advance those opportunities and create some significant brain-related disease companies.